Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the James Skrmetta Show podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate it. I, of course, am James Skrmetta, but who the hell else would I be hosting this show? Thank you for clicking play, tuning in. This show is going to be mostly focused on the Breonna Taylor case. We're going to talk about, I'm going to summarize what happened. I'm going to try and offer as much information as possible to you that has been given to us. And then I will break down kind of my thoughts on the case. Just like with George Floyd, just like with Jacob Blake, I'm going to offer you a perspective, devil's advocate look, however you want to perceive it. But this is a very delicate situation, so I will not be offering blazing hot takes like some of the people in the media. Before we get to that, I do have some housekeeping I want to talk about as far as the content, as far as the podcast, as far as all that stuff. Of course, we're going to do a Gilmore Girls update. Let's start the show with the Gilmore Girls update. Play the music. No. I'm just kidding. We're not going to start the show. We're not going to go through that again. I'm just kidding. We actually are. Play the music. On the road, feeling lonely and so cold. Yep, there it is. Gilmore Girls update. In this season 3, episode 4, something like that. Right now, Rory's having a hard time deciding between Dean and Jess. Wow, what a show. All right, that has been your Gilmore Girls update. Still absolutely obsessed with the show. One of the greatest things I've ever watched. So let's talk about content for a little bit. So I have been doing this, as you know, if you've listened to this podcast since January. I've been doing this for a really, really long time. And I actually have analytics pulled up right now. If you look at the analytics, first of all, the analytics only go far enough back to July 27th, 2015, which is not, very far. It's not far enough. I mean, I have videos older than that. So just that right there is 5 years. Now, there's at least another year, probably another couple years, somewhere between 8 and 6 years, really consistently been doing this kind of content. And it's been sporadic. There's been podcasts in there. There's been different types of videos in there, what have you. Well, recently we've been putting out a ridiculous amount of content. It's almost, I don't want to say a superhuman effort, but it is something where we're doing 4 podcasts a week with the 2 football podcasts and these podcasts. We're doing upwards of 15 to 20 YouTube videos a week. We're also live streaming a lot of this, editing the videos, discussing stuff on live stream, doing all kinds of stuff on there. And the content is therefore spread out all over the place. And there are a lot of people who only watch on YouTube. There are a lot of people who only listen to the podcast. There's a lot of people who only watch live. So it's a little mismatch of everything. And my goal is to make sure that all the content we have hopefully gets evenly distributed. And so that's why we have recently, if you've seen on the podcast or on the iTunes or Spotify channel, we have recently started uploading little kind of snippets of audio that aren't full podcast, but they are us talking about stuff. Recently, we uploaded us talking about the Ellen DeGeneres monologue. That is a video on YouTube we have where we watched and reacted to her apology on the first monologue of her returning to her show. I thought that was a great topic and a great conversation, and I don't want to rehash the conversation. I don't want to fake it and act like I'm doing it for the first time, but actually doing it for the second time just for the podcast. So I uploaded that little snippet. The week before that, we had a rant, and we uploaded that. So what you can expect here is the Football Show podcasts, which are strictly for the recap and preview of that week's NFL games. You can look for the James Skrmetta Show podcasts twice a week, once at the beginning, once at the end, and those will be, you know how those are. And then you now will also be getting little clips a couple times a week of what I think are the best rants or the best topics or the best discussions that we may have had somewhere else. So if we had them on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, it doesn't matter. So if you're seeing these pop up and you're like, what the hell is this? What am I getting? That's why you're getting it. We're going to experiment with that and see how that works. Honestly, I think it bridges a nice little gap there where some people don't have an hour to listen to the podcast. Some people don't have 2 hours to listen to the football podcast. So being able to also get what we're doing in quick little 10-minute chunks, 15-minute chunks, 20-minute chunks can be helpful as well. So most of the time, whatever you hear on the podcast is available somewhere else. So like with the Ellen DeGeneres thing, if you wanted to actually see it, if you wanted to visualize it, please go over to the YouTube channel. Just search my name on YouTube. Now, speaking of, I'm looking at the analytics here, and it's really kind of crazy because the last 6 months quarantine have seen some explosive growth. Specifically in the last couple of weeks have seen explosive growth. The numbers, I was just going through them today, the numbers are kind of staggering. So in the 2 time periods that I've compared are July 27, 2015, all the way to September 20th, 2019. And then we have January 1st, 2020 to yesterday. And if you look at the prior, so the first 5 years, those are some of my most watched videos. In fact, my 2 most watched videos of all time, something about the Brett Favre at the ESPYs in 2015 and U.S. men's national team, Alexi Lawless. Those have like a combined 150,000 views. So that is going to skew a lot of these, but remember that. So on one side are my most watched videos ever and 5 years of videos. And then on the other side, you have 6 months of work. So let's do the average view duration. For 5 years, it was about 2 minutes. The past 6 months, it's been about 3 minutes. And a 1 minute boost is pretty big, is really big actually. So that was something that was very positive. Let's go to views. Now remember, 2 videos are holding a heavy weight of this. To show you what I'm talking about here, the top 5 videos from the first 5 years all have more than 10,000 views, 2 of which have more than 30,000 views. In the last 6 months, I only have 1 video with more than 10,000 views. And the views are 167,000 to 60,000 in those time periods. Then we go to likes. Likes is interesting as well. Engagement, all that stuff. This is where it starts to get really interesting, where in 5 years, I only got 1,462 likes on my YouTube videos. In the last 6 months, I've received 940. So it's almost, that's pretty close when you're talking about 5 years of likes and just videos being dumped out there to the last 6 months. And then if we go to comments, this is what's really changed. And this is what's I've seen a lot of recently. In 5 years, I got 550 comments. In the last 6 months, I received 400 comments. I used to have notifications on my phone, like every time I got a YouTube comment, it would pop up like a text message or something, and then I would go respond to it. It only happened, you can see here, it only happened about 10 times a year. It only happened about 100 times a year. So in the last 6 months, though, especially in the last 2 weeks, I had to stop doing that. I had to turn the notifications off because there's been so many comments. Not all positive, certainly not, and we'll talk about some of those. And then the big one, in the first 5 years, I had 176 subscribers. Now that's added a little bit of time there. You add 50, add 100, doesn't matter to me, of what the time is that we're not using the analytics. In the last 6 months, so again, for the first 5 years, 176 subscribers. In the last 6 months, we have had 184 subscribers. So the content is picked up, the engagement is picked up, everything is picked up. So I just wanted to say thank you for supporting these efforts, and we have seen much more success in the last 6 months than we have in the first 6-7 years. And it feels good that we're putting out the effort and we seem to be receiving some of that support. As far as what the big topics were this week, so to update you, I am the biggest simp on the planet, apparently, because I had a discussion about female people in the media, sports media, and how it's kind of unfair that they have to be the total package. But I also talked about how it's a dog-eat-dog world, and that's just how it is. So if you want to find those delicious conversations, you can go ahead and take a look on YouTube. Also, the entirety of the New Orleans Saints franchise fan base hates me right now and thinks that Jameis Winston is the next great thing. I've had people compare Jameis Winston to Peyton Manning. I've had, people, they're all over the place. So I spend most of my days engaging with those likes and are those, like-minded and not like-minded people and trying to push them the right way. But that is what I've been doing. So thank you very much again for all the continued support. Speaking of continued support, my God, the presenting sponsor of this podcast, Mackhard Anderson and Associates, PLLC, 601-450-1715. Never forget that number. Put it in your phone. Add it as a favorite. Do whatever you got to do. The website, mackhardlaw.com, MCHARDLAW.com. They do it all. And what, James? What does do it all mean? Glad you asked. Car wrecks, 18-wheeler collisions, wrongful deaths, bad faith insurance claims, fire loss, termite damage, offshore injuries, employment discriminations, and contract business disputes. Whatever your situation is, your case, your life, your family, your security, your future is important to the good folk at Mackhard Anderson and Associates, PLLC. I know these people personally. I would trust them with any legal issues. When you're battling in the courts and you're battling in these high-pressure lawyer situations, this ain't my cousin Vinny. Okay, you can't go do it to yourself. You cannot aggressively represent yourself. You can't negotiate on yourself, and you can't litigate for yourself. So let them do it. Do not fall prey. Do not fall victim to these people who are putting up 20 billboards in your area, but they actually live in a 6,000 square foot house 2 states over, and they have a big face on the billboard and it says, one call, that's all. One click, that's it. 15 minutes or less. They are scuzzos. They're not in for your best interests. They only want to line their wallets. Do not fall victim to that. Thank you again. Mackhard Anderson and Associates, PLLC, 601-450-1715. The law office is located in Mississippi, the only firm delivering 7-figure settlements in the state of Mississippi. So how are we doing, guys? How the hell are we doing? How are we doing out there? How's quarantine treating you? It's so many things I can ask, right? How's quarantine treating you? How's social unrest treating you? How's civil unrest treating you? How's the election treating you? How's the social dilemma treating you? People, there's so much to do right now. There's so much to think about right now. There's so much to talk about right now. How the hell are we all navigating this? All I can tell you is navigate it your best way possible. Last podcast we talked a lot about doing whatever the hell makes you happy and all of that. A very motivational podcast, might I add. I can blame Gilmore Girls for that, for me being in a good mood as of late. I'm learning a lot about myself, and I think people are learning a lot about themselves. And not all of those learning moments are fun. Not all those moments are great. I've had dark-ass moments in the last 6 months, and I'm sure you have had dark moments too. A lot of what people are going through right now is shaking them to their core, literally shaking them to the core of their beliefs, the core of their ethics, the core of what they thought life was, the core of what they thought their role was. I know I talked about this last week on the podcast, but when you think about what life was like 8 months ago and some of those things that don't exist anymore, it's pretty wild. There was a couple days this week specifically where I was just home. I had nothing to do. And I cleaned my house. I went shopping or grocery shopping. I don't go shopping anymore. Went grocery shopping, all of that. Took care of everything, made some phone calls, took care of some work, and it was about 9 a.m. Worked out, cooked lunch, 10:30. I'm like, man, this is wild, and we're 6-7 months into this thing, and it's just only going to get crazier. I said it last week on the podcast. I bought a damn Yankee candle. Your diet, everything, I'm sure is changing. I used to go with my family. I used to go every Friday night to the sushi place, and I have not eaten there in 7 months. I've gotten to go, but I have not sat down in there and eaten in there for 7 months. And I was going there 2-3 times a month for years. Church, and not everyone, of course, is a believer. And that's totally fine. We accept any and all here. Any religion is fine. I have no problem with talking or discussing it's less of a religion and more of just a belief in a higher being. But if you're, if you don't believe in that as well and you want to be licked by the eternal flames of damnation, that's fine too. That's a joke. I really don't care. But I mean, church. Think about how big of a deal church was to so many people and how that was their routine. Every single Sunday they went. They saw the same people. They sang the songs. They did everything. And I don't know anyone who goes to church anymore. I didn't even know they were open. And I mean, I haven't been in 6 or 7 months, and I try and go almost every week. So little things like that are just so different. And I hope, I can't give you any advice. I hope whatever you're doing is working for you. That's honestly it. I hope that however you're scheduling your life, however you're formulating your life, whatever it is right now, I hope it works for you. I mean, for the last 12 years, 13 years, I've gone to a gym to work out. And for the last 6, 7 months, I've worked out of my house. I have this like jailhouse routine of pull-ups and push-ups and squats and stretches and, it's some real Jean-Claude Van Damme in hell type stuff, mixed with some running and some swimming. And, so then you're talking about your diets. I've eaten this pretty much the same, like 6 meals rotated for 6, 7 months. And it's working for me right now. And my God, I hope it's working for you. And if it ain't working for you, change it up. If something's not working for you, this is the time to change it up. If you can't change it up, if you try to change it up, if it doesn't work, reach out to someone. You can always reach out to me. Twitter at James_Skrmetta. Instagram at James_Skrmetta. But it's a crazy time, ladies and gentlemen. And it's only going to get crazier. The elections are coming up. I can't promise you anything good there. I don't know what we're about to see, honestly. Both ways, whether Trump wins, whether Biden wins, whether, Texas Pete, whether he wins, whoever wins, I don't know what this country's going to look like come December. So we'll do our best to navigate through that, but I don't know. We'll have to cross our fingers and see. So we're going to spend the rest of the podcast talking about Breonna Taylor, and with George Floyd, with Jacob Blake also, I believe. I think we dedicated the whole podcast to them. If I was doing a radio show, if I had 3 hours to fill, we'd mix and match. We'd get to talk, do the topics and all that stuff, but I don't have to do that. We're running our own show here. So that's why I like to front load with all the stuff we talked about, the fun and games, all that, because this is a very serious situation. This is something that a lot of people are putting a lot of time and emotions into. And I don't like to go from Breonna Taylor and all this situation and then be like, all right, guys, now let's talk about Ariana Grande and this. So that's why we kind of do this sometimes, as not only respect for the situation, but respect for my listeners, because I don't want to seem insincere. For example, if we would have started the podcast with Breonna Taylor and then I went into the Gilmore Girls thing, or I went into an ad, or I went into coronavirus talk, it would have felt weird. So let's do the Breonna Taylor thing. First, let's summarize what's going on. So in the Breonna Taylor case, let me answer some questions, right? Now, this is from the AP. So this information is factual, true information. This is not from some forum. This is not from some Reddit post. So who was Breonna Taylor? And I'll link this in the bio on YouTube. Who was Breonna Taylor? Taylor was a 26-year-old emergency medical technician who lived with her sister in an apartment in Louisville. She and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, had settled in to watch a movie in her bedroom on the night of March 13th when police came to her door with a narcotics warrant that was one of 5 issued that night in a wide-ranging sting. Okay, so what this means is that there was multiple drug raids performed this night in Louisville. All right, so according to this, it was one of 5. So there's 5 raids. 5 raids were happening, all the same problem, all drug-related. Minutes later, Taylor was fatally shot. Her death sparked months of protest in Louisville, and celebrities including LeBron James, Beyonce, and Oprah have called on authorities to criminally charge the police officers who were involved in the raid. How many times was she shot? She was shot 6 times on the night, but only one of the gunshots was fatal. Sergeant John Mattingly had entered the home after the door was broken down, and he was shot once in the leg by Walker, Taylor's boyfriend. Walker has said he didn't know the police were at the door, and he fired a warning shot thinking it was an intruder. After Walker fired, Mattingly, Hankinson, and a third officer, Miles Cosgrove, returned fire for a total of 32 gunshots fired by police. Why was no one charged with shooting Breonna Taylor? The fatal bullet was fired by Cosgrove, but added that Cosgrove and Mattingly were justified in the use of force because they were shot at first. Cameron said, this is Cameron. So Cameron is, I didn't cover that. That is the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Cameron said state law bars us from seeking charges in Breonna Taylor's death. Cameron also said there was no conclusive evidence that any of Hankinson's 10 gunshots hit Taylor inside of her home. Hankinson was charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing shots that went into another home with people inside. Now, between me, you, and the camera, I didn't even know wanton endangerment was a thing. I mean, someone asked me what it was, and, not to be crass, but when someone asked me what wanton endangerment was, I was asking about the side of fried rice. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So let me go ahead and break down what it actually is. Under Kentucky law, a person commits that crime when he or she wantonly, and man, I hope it's wantonly and not something else, but wantonly, because if it's like wantonly or something like that, and I'm over here talking about wontons and fried rice, I'm going to sound ridiculous, but I haven't heard it said. Wantonly or wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person, and does so under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life. Other states may use terms like reckless endangerment for an equivalent offense. So in layman's terms, this is doing something just willy-nilly. All right, this is something where all hell's breaking loose, and you say, F it, I don't give a shit about whoever's around me, I'm just spraying. So this officer, what happened was, this officer, Mr. Hankinson, he just fired into the apartment without a line of shot, without seeing anything. He was just blind firing. Now, it's an apartment building, so he's not taking into account who's around him. He's charged with 1 count for each of the neighboring apartment's occupants, a pregnant woman, her husband, their 5-year-old child, who were all asleep. They were not hit by the shots. So that's what the charge was, and that's what the charge is. Hankinson was fired from the Louisville department in June. He was the only officer charged by the grand jury. The first-degree wanton or wanton endangerment charges are Class D, the lowest level felonies in Kentucky. When he was fired, Police Chief Robert Schroeder said that Hankinson showed extreme indifference to the value of human life when he fired blindly into Taylor's home. Will there be any other charges? Cameron said it is unlikely there will be any further criminal charges coming from his investigation from the night of the shooting. All right, so that's where we are. That's the information. That's what we know, okay? Those are the facts. Now, the similarities to Jacob Blake and George Floyd, or as far as the similarities in how I perceive this situation, is that there are multiple questions that need to be asked and multiple answers that need to be given. So the first question is, did the police do what they were supposed to do? Did the police enact their training? Did the protocol service the situation? Was all of that good? Was all of that right? I'm not a police officer. I can't tell you that. That's what the investigation is for. It sounds like the only part of that was wrong was what Hankinson did, and he got charged for it, and he got the wanton endangerment. Then we go into what we're hearing a lot of the racial injustice. Now, this is where I think we may start to have some disagreements. It's really hard for me to see this and say, oh, well, this is obviously a racial killing. This is obviously a couple of white cops going and murdering some African-American people. Because that doesn't really add up here. That doesn't really add up when there's 5 raids going on and there's only 1 dead person. When there's 5 raids going on and only one, out of all those raids, there's only 1 moment of violence. There's only shots being fired at 1 place. Now, that's not to say that Breonna Taylor wasn't a victim or isn't a victim. That's not to say that Breonna Taylor deserved to die. She obviously did not deserve to die. But it's not like they came in there murdering Breonna Taylor and this is a racial killing. So if we can agree on that, if we can agree on that Breonna Taylor is a victim, Breonna Taylor should not have died that night. Breonna Taylor was in the wrong place, wrong time, and a whole bunch of shit went wrong. Her boyfriend getting up, shooting at the cops, he said that he thought that the cops were Breonna's ex-boyfriend. He didn't know what was going on. He thought someone was breaking in. I get all that. And if that's the case, if your argument is, well, he had no clue who was breaking into his house, I get that. I understand that. And again, this is one of those things where we're talking about a wrong place, wrong time. A lot of bad stuff went down. Did the officer say, this is officer whoever, this is the Louisville Police Department, we're coming in there for a raid? Did he hear that? Was he sleeping? Was he not? I don't know. But all of that is irrelevant whenever you're talking about, is this a racial killing? Because if that's what the argument is, that they should have alerted who they were, he shouldn't have shot, they shouldn't have shot, all that has nothing to do with race. That's more about the circumstances of the raid and was protocol adhered to. That's what that is. Okay? Now, what I don't like, or what I don't understand, is how people are holding on to this idea that this is a cops versus African American situation. I mean, we saw people, so obviously whenever this ruling came out, Louisville went up in flames. We saw riots, we saw protests, and then officers started getting shot. As of right now, 2 officers were shot in Louisville. And we saw some things in the media that were basically saying this is a police versus us situation. I'll go ahead and pull some of those up right now. So this is what Colin Kaepernick said. Now, I wouldn't normally put this out there because it's just one person, but ESPN retweeted it. I mean, this got like major coverage. I mean, anytime ESPN is retweeting something like this, it basically is ESPN saying it. This is Colin Kaepernick's tweet. The white supremacist institution of policing that stole Breonna Taylor's life from us must be abolished for the safety and well-being of our people. So, I mean, this is pretty blatant, right? This is pretty blatant saying that policing is a white supremacist institution and that the police stole Breonna Taylor's life and that the police must be abolished for the safety and well-being of our people, of African Americans. So this could not be more them versus us. I just think that's not the right way to do this. Just like we talked about with Jacob Blake. I'm not saying Jacob Blake should have been shot 7 times. I'm not saying Jacob Blake should have been, paralyzed or whatever he is now. I'm not saying that the cop did what he did correctly. I'm not saying that was training. But I'm also not saying that is a white versus black, them versus us, police versus the world, African Americans versus the world situation. In that time, I said, look, we need to just see what the training calls for. Is the training correct? Is the protocol correct? Did he do his job? Did he not? If he didn't, figure it out. Is it on him or is it on the training? And then fix whatever. If it's on him, deliver charges. If George Floyd, same deal. Investigate what the hell happened. If the cop did what he did, if the cop murdered this guy, if this was a racial killing, okay. If it wasn't, if we can now deduce that it wasn't and we go to the training, let's figure out, did the training fail or did the cop fail? Or did both fail, right? I just don't see this. I just don't see how what seems to me like, again, wrong place, wrong time, a lot of bad shit happened. Victim, 100%. Obviously, I wouldn't say a totally innocent victim. I mean, this is a police raid of some kind of drug raid. So it's not like she was walking down the street and got blasted 6 times by some random cop. This is a very specific situation. Okay, she didn't run a stop sign and she was in the street and she got shot 6 times and killed. That's very different than a police raided their house. Her boyfriend shot at police returned fire. That doesn't make her any less of a victim, but it does blur the water of the innocence of the whole situation and whatever. So I hesitate so much with this. And honestly, this case is difficult to talk about because on one hand, I'm just saying the same stuff I've said before with Jacob Blake and George Floyd. But this is also the only time that the person who was killed wasn't directly related to the crime, right? George Floyd was being apprehended. Mike Brown, he was selling cigarettes. Jacob Blake, same deal. This is someone who was just in the situation. So, it's like, I do feel like I'm saying the same thing. I do feel like I'm just saying that, hey, look, this happened. I think that we can all agree this was a really bad thing. She should not have died. 100% agree. But I just don't agree with putting the stamp on it that this killing was indicative of a white supremacist institution that should be abolished in order to keep African Americans safe. That seems like a lot. Like, doesn't that seem like a bit of a stretch? Doesn't that seem like a bit of a, wait a minute, that doesn't really add up? Like, how does that add up? How does it add up? And perfect world, I'm one guy doing a podcast. Perfect world, I'd have multiple people in here, some who see it one way, some who see it the other, because I really don't know. Like I said, I've tried to research this. I've listened to people on YouTube or their podcast on the other side, and every time I do, it goes down the water of, or it goes down the stream or the river of, they shouldn't have shot into the house, or they should have said they were there, or any of that kind of stuff. And that's all fine. If that is what we're talking about, I'm fully for all investigations into the actual actions, and if they were done correctly. If not, why not? And then deliver charges, which they have. Okay? They deduce that the shooting into the house, the shooting back and forth, was justified because these police officers are getting shot at. What's the other option? They get shot out, they turn around and run? So if we check that off the list, then we go to the other guy. He blindly fired in there. Yeah, that's wrong. Shouldn't do that. He gets busted for it. Turns out he didn't hit anybody. So you can't charge him with murder. He didn't shoot anyone. So you can't say, oh, he murdered her if he didn't shoot anyone. And back to the other two cops, you can't say they murdered her when they're returning fire in a police raid. So it's one of those situations that's super blurry, super sticky, not good at anywhere in it. But it makes it way worse when you have people who are demanding justice for something that seemingly there is no justice. I don't understand what the justice is. What do they want? What do people who are screaming justice for Breonna, what do they want them to say? That these cops went there in the dead of night to murder Breonna Taylor? They went to just murder her? Because it obviously wasn't they went to go murder black people, because none of the other people in the raids died. None of the other people in the raids got shot. In fact, none of the other raids got violent. Or was this a situation where a misunderstanding from the boyfriend of what was even going on, allegedly, I mean, we don't know what happened there, but allegedly a misunderstanding from him led to him shooting out at the cops? It's like, I think that you can say this was an unjust situation. I think you can say this should not have happened. I think you can say she was a victim without also saying that the police is a white supremacist institution and we need to get rid of them. In my opinion, this is where it gets really ugly, because this is what gets us down a slippery slope of no resolution. If people believe that the police are their enemy and are out to get them and are keeping them unsafe and is a white supremacist institution or a black supremacist institution or a German supremacist institution or whatever supremacist institution, if they believe that that's the case, that's only going to cause division, and it's only going to cause these like super polar climates like we have right now. The fact that at those protests, at those riots, whoever saw the police and shot at them, basically saying, I'm shooting at my enemies, I'm trying to take down my enemies. I mean, we saw in the past couple of weeks the police officer who was attacked. They were in their car, and a person walked up to the police car and shot into the car. They're out there trying to kill cops. And not everybody is critically thinking. Not everybody is not everyone is looking at the facts. Not everyone is weighing this correctly. And that leads to really, really, really bad things, like someone walking up to a police car just firing into it, like someone seeing police officers at a protest and attacking them, trying to kill them. I don't think this is helping anything. And we talked about this with Jacob Blake, and we talked about this with George Floyd. I think sometimes athletes or celebrities or whoever, they hear of a situation happening and they don't do the research. They don't do the hard work and to figure out what's actually going on. Instead, they just kind of start screaming, and they just kind of start screaming to scream. They just start being a part of something to be a part of something. We saw it with Jacob Blake with the WNBA. I was saying, let's do the investigation. Let's do the whole thing. We don't know what happened. Let's relax. Before we could even figure out who was who, we had WNBA players wearing the Jacob Blake shirts. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine off the podcast or off whatever, just us two talking about it. And I'm not on one side or the other. In this situation, I'm not saying that the Louisville police did a stand-up job, gold stars, gold stars. I'm not saying that Breonna Taylor was racially murdered in a hate crime. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that the officer shouldn't be held accountable. I'm saying that true justice has to be worked for, and true justice has to come from the system that we have in place. And if you think the system is corrupt, if you think the system is broken, if you think the system is only there to help white people and hold down black people, that's a whole different conversation. I'm speaking about these specific scenarios. I'm looking at this case with the Breonna Taylor thing, and I just don't know. I don't know what the other option is. I don't know what the alternative is. I don't know what the other answer is. If there was like a multiple choice test with this, I don't think I could see how, answer A, cops are racist murderers. I don't see how that fits into this. Option C, white supremacist institution, harming African. I don't see that. I don't see that. And these are weird times for me because as a middle-class white guy in his 30s, it's hard for me to sit up here and say that these cops aren't racist murderer bounty hunters, because so many people are so angry with this. And I totally understand, 100% understand. I said this in the George Floyd case. I 100% understand if a minority group feels like they are not given the same representation or they're given the same, privileges or whatever. I totally 110% get that. And like I said before, I am guilty of that as well. If I'm walking out of a gas station and I see a old white lady walking into the gas station, I'm just like, okay, it's just I'm old white lady. If I see 3 or 4 people, let's just say like Latino looking people or whatever, look like, with tattoos everywhere, bandanas, wife beaters, and they got some angry looks on their face, I'm obviously susceptible to all of a sudden thinking like, oh shit, and I don't like that. I realize that those are problems that are in this country. I realize that there are stereotypes. I realize there are prejudices. I realize there are privileges. I totally understand that. And I totally understand the frustration with that. But I don't think the way to solve that is to basically hold the country at ransom or to hold the police officers at ransom and say, make these people sacrificial lambs to make up for everything else. Make the cops who were in the raid of the Breonna Taylor thing sacrificial lambs and make them come down hard on them to make up for everything else. I don't think that's true justice. I don't think that's the way this should be handled. I think that bad cops should get what they deserve. I think bad cops should get fired or arrested or serve time or be sentenced, whatever you got to do. I think that if the training is failing, then I do 100% agree with the idea of reforming the police or kind of just messing around with the funds. Do we need to put more funds into training? Do we need to totally redo the training? Do we need to start figuring out who is being hired as a police officer? Do we need to have some regulations in place as far as how much they're tested, their mental capabilities, their physical capabilities? Do we need to be doing that? I'm all for reform. I'm all for making this better for everyone. That doesn't happen in the world where every single time something happens, it becomes, who were the officers? Tell me where their homes are. Let's go destroy their homes. Screw the investigation. Screw the justice system. Let's take vigilante actions into this. Let's burn the city down. Let's build statues of the victims. And let's crucify the officers in the street. I don't think that's it either. I don't think that's it. And, I don't think there is a clear-cut resolution. I don't think there is a, oh, you're right, oh, you're wrong. 99% of the time, I will sit on this show and say, I am right. And that's just who I am. Is that a flaw? Possibly. 99% of the time, I'll say, I'm right up here. In these situations, no one's right. No one's wrong. All I can say is that we're no closer getting right by having these incredibly divisive situations where, Colin Kaepernick is calling for the complete abolishment of police officers and that they're a white supremacist institution. I mean, that just seems way beyond the pale. That seems like, just like we talk about the rioters and looters. I totally get protesting. I totally support. I protest. I support the protest during the national anthem, or I don't support. I'm not doing it, but I understand it, and I understand people's rights to protest. And I'm not one of the people saying I can't believe they're kneeling at the national anthem. It's like, you know what? This is why America's America, because people can protest. Let's listen to what they're saying. Okay, like I'm there, but I'm not there when it's like, okay, they're protesting by breaking into a Target, stealing everything in it, and burning down a car dealership. That's not protesting to me. That's not change to me. That's just angry, divisive violence. That's just, throwing a Molotov cocktail through a building, that's not really what I'm thinking of when I think of protesting. That's more of just anarchy, chaos. Same with this. I totally get people who are saying, this happens way too much. Why are people dying? Why are police killings happening? I'm there. But I'm there. I'm in that bubble. I'm in the bubble of, for sure, let's take a look and let's see why. Let's see what's leading up to this. Is it the people in it? Is it bad time, bad place? Is it the inner cities? Is it the lifestyle? Is it this area? What is it? Is it the training? Is it this? I'm in that bubble. Let's figure it out. I'm not in the bubble of saying, burn down the police stations. This is a white supremacist institution. And, I may be repeating myself during this. Again, no script, unedited, whatever. And I'm just trying to make sense of this stuff. So if I'm saying the same thing over and over again, I just want to make this really clear. Because once I publish this, I can't just go back and be like, oh, LOL, I didn't mean minutes 16 through 22. And I do see people who are out there saying, say her name, figure this out, we deserve justice. And I agree with all that. She does deserve justice. She does deserve the investigation. She deserves just what anyone else would deserve if they were killed in their bedroom by a police raid. Tell me what happened. Tell me who's at fault. Is anyone at fault? What do we do? But I don't think that means hang these cops from light poles and we'll go about our merry way. Right? I don't think that means burn the city of Louisville down. And then they get into the whole, the riots and Louisville, or burn Louisville was trending, and people are blaming right-wing groups and Russia and whatever. And the water is muddy. Our society right now is muddy, and everyone's muddy right now. I've said before a million times, this is probably the hardest time to live mentally. This is the worst time ever to live for mental health and clarity and all that stuff in human history. And so I don't blame people for being confused. I don't blame people for being angry. I don't blame people for being depressed. But when it comes to seemingly the complete tear down of our country or our justice system or our policing or whatever, I think that we need to take that a little more seriously than retweets, likes, and TikToks. We need to actually step back from this thing and say, okay, let's give it the time it deserves. Let's do the investigation. Let's take a look, and let's go from there. I don't think there's any room with this for hot takes. I don't think there's any room for impulsive decisions. I don't think there's any room for, these super explosive, volatile responses. And maybe I'm off base. Again, I said, it's not easy for me to stand up here and say, hey, this is it. This is a situation that really doesn't involve me. Not a police officer, not an African American, just kind of a bystander here. So I understand that you might not want to hear this from me. I understand that I'm not the face of this thing. I certainly should not be. But it would be also remiss for me to completely not talk about it. And this is how I see it. And I'm going to get some people who are saying that I'm siding with the cops, or I'm siding with white people, or I'm a white supremacist, or whatever. And I'm going to get some people who are saying that I'm siding with Breonna Taylor and I'm BLM and I'm a simp and all this other stuff. But I'm neither. And this is where I am in this political climate. I know I am not one of the people who are burning down cities. I know I'm not one of the people who want to see socialism or whatever else come to this country. I know I'm not one of those people who want Sharia law to take over. I know I'm not on that side. I know I'm not one of the people who believe 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds should be having transgender surgeries. But I also know I'm not on the other side. I'm not on the far right side. And I think that's where we should be. And I think that's a safe place to be right now. It's a safe place for discussion. It's a safe place for critical thinking. It's a safe place to figure out why, since January, we've had 4 or 5 huge moments of civil and social unrests that has resulted in the burning down of cities, the rioting in the streets, the killing of police officers or the attack on police officers, people being murdered in the street. Why is this happening? I think it's happening because too many people are being pulled to those radical sides. Too many people are being pulled to the way left and the way right. And I'm begging you to try and come towards the middle. Try and come towards in this area. Try and be constructive. Ask yourself, what happened here? What happened in the Breonna Taylor case? Why was she killed? Ask yourself that. And then let's move to the next question. Who killed her? Was the police doing their jobs? Should they be charged? What would you charge them with? Do you think this is a murder? Do you think that they had racial intent? Do you think that they had racial hatred? Do you think that this was a white versus black, police versus black situation? And if you don't, I think then we can start to figure out the process of fixing this. If you do, then I think there's a whole lot more questions in there, and that branches out to our very society that we even have here. And I fear that the more that we have to answer these questions and the more that people are given time and resources and ammunition to go to those radical sides, the more they hear the white supremacist institution, the more they hear abolish this, the more they hear burn this place, the more they hear them versus us, the more they hear that, the more that this is going to happen. Because there is not going to be that room in the middle anymore. There is not going to be that time for discussion or discourse or critical thinking or questions or investigations. Those times will be over. And we'll see more and more of this street justice and more of these vigilantes on either side taking matters into their own hands. When I see something like this happen, and I see people like Sean King coming out there and putting out police officers' home addresses, that is too far, ladies and gentlemen. That is way too far. Putting out possibly innocent, putting out people's addresses that we don't even know. I mean, like I've told this story before, but when I worked at the paper, we couldn't put the name and any of the information about a person in the paper if they only had one count of like child pornography or something, or some kind of sexual charge like that. They had to have multiple because we were trying to protect the people, because we didn't know if they were innocent or guilty at that point, and we didn't want people to go into the street and handle it on their own. And that wasn't just like where I worked. That was a full-on media thing. So the idea that Sean King and all these think pieces and mouthpieces for these right-wing, left-wing groups, that they're thinking, yeah, man, let's put the home address of every police officer in this department and let's see what the hell happens. That sounds like wanton endangerment to me. I mean, that sounds like a total indifference of human life. And at the end of the day, I don't want to have a total indifference of human life. At the end of the day, I care about human life. At the end of the day, I don't want to live in a world that is you're with me or against me. I don't want to live in a world that is red versus blue. I don't want to live in a world that is white versus black. I don't want to live in a world that's police versus them or police versus us. That's not the world I want to be in. And I'm terrified that the more I look at the news, the more I listen to people talk, everything is becoming like that. Everything. Absolutely every topic, every category, every meeting, every group, everything is you're on one side or you're on the other side. And that's no way to live. There's no way to have a country. There's no way to do anything. And as long as I've got this microphone, and as long as I've got this internet, and as long as I've got this platform, whether it be 10 people or 10,000 people, I'm going to say the same thing. I want justice. I want equality. I want balance. That's what I want. And in this case, I don't think that the answer to that is destroying these police officers. They got investigated. We know the facts of the case. I'm looking at this, and for where I'm looking, it doesn't look like these were guys who are guys or women. I don't know the other two officers. I don't think this is a group of people who were, flipping quarters trying to figure out who could go in first to kill the most black people. I don't believe that. I don't believe that this was a racial killing. I don't believe that this was a murder from these cops just walking around murdering people because they're African American. I really believe this was a bad place, bad time, chaos ensued, shit went wrong. Was the boyfriend wrong? Were the cops wrong? Were they both wrong? I don't know. We'll figure that out. And the investigation seemingly has done what they have had to do to figure it out. And I trust that system. And I trust that what I'm looking at does not look like a scene out of Django. Whew. So hopefully that provided you with some answers. Hopefully that provided you with a foundation. Hopefully that provided you with enough to make your own reasoning and your own critical thinking and to figure out what you think is the move here. And I'm all ears. I'm absolutely all ears. I'm all ears to hear what you think. And I think, honestly, what I expect people to reach out and message me or text me or tweet at me or DM me on Instagram or comment on YouTube or whatever. And I expect people to echo exactly what I said. I think people will say like, well, the cops should have said something, which I agree. That can certainly be looked at. But I don't think that has anything to do with this idea that it is a white supremacist situation. So if you are about to comment, if you are about to text me or tweet me or DM me or whatever, really think about what I've said here. Really think about this. I don't want to have to answer this exact same thing 50 times on this video or podcast. All right? I've gotten used to now at this point actually going in the comments and using like a Cliff Notes bullet point thing to make sure that as people are commenting, they can look up and see exactly what I said. I believe she should still be alive. I believe Breonna Taylor was a victim. I think cops should be held accountable. All of those things, check out. I do not think this was a killing based on race. I do not think that this was a killing from racist police officers who were murdering black people. That doesn't add up. I think this was a wrong place, wrong time, drug raid gone bad. And that's it. And we can debate from now on. So there we go. So I hope if you stuck around through that, I hope I illuminated a little bit of both the facts and illuminated a little bit about how we can look at these situations like this. I hope that the next time this happens, I wish it would never happen, but you can't. We're not living in a utopia. So the next time we have something like this happen, I hope that it is handled better. I hope we don't have burning cities. I hope we don't have dead police officers. I hope we don't have dead victims. Like I hope everything gets better. I'm rooting for humanity. Root for humanity with me. And I think if we all are rooting for humanity, we'll figure it out. I really do. We're going to end the show on that. Thank you for listening. This is the last podcast of the week. You will hear the football show probably late Friday, Saturday will be posted on here and also on YouTube. Again, the content that you can find audio podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor, literally wherever podcasts are sold, we are there. You can find the video versions of everything we do on YouTube. Just search my name. And if you want to see me live and in action, if you want to actually have a live conversation, a live debate, or whatever, or just hang out, be a couple of pals, you can find me on Twitch at my name. Today I had about an hour conversation with someone who came from YouTube, and he wanted to talk about the Katie Nolan, Jason Whitlock thing. And we had a really nice conversation, and it was funny because he ended the whole thing saying, "You know what? You're a pretty level-headed guy." And I take a great pride in that someone can disagree or agree, come to continue the conversation, have the conversation in real time, and then say, "You know what? I enjoyed the discourse. Thank you very much." And I told him, I enjoyed that. The only reason I'm doing this, is at the end of the day, I really do just love conversation. I really do just love discourse or talking about whatever. I don't have a problem at all with opposing views, which at this point in life, I feel like, or this point in society, I feel like this is like the minority, is people who are like, yeah, I'd love to talk to someone who doesn't believe in the same religion as me, or I'd love to talk to somebody who doesn't, who's a different race or ethnicity or whatever. I'm there. I'm still there. Different ideas, different ideals, different everything. That's what makes the world go around. That's what I'm all about. So that's where we need to be, guys. But I appreciate you listening. This will go up late Thursday. And so hope you have a great rest of your week. You'll hear from me again on Monday on the podcast. So we'll see what happens over the weekend. We'll see what all takes place. Enjoy yourself. Don't stress out too much. Thank you again for all the support. As we started the podcast off with, I really do appreciate everything. It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like 180 subscribers in 6 months is nothing crazy. You see people who have millions and millions of subscribers, but as someone who's been doing this for a long time, again, it does feel good to see some fruits of that labor. So thank you again very, very much. I appreciate it. I couldn't do without you, all the kind words every week from different people. It really is amazing. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. This is a hard time, guys. This is a hard time, and we're just trying to make it a little easier. So thank you. My throat's killing me. A lot of, no COVID, just a whole lot of talking. All of a sudden doing 30 hours of content a week is, I'm starting to sound like Miley Cyrus or something. I'm starting to sound like if Hannah Montana has a 30 years after reunion tour, I might be opening up for her. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. You will hear me again next week. This has been the greatest podcast, the greatest content creator. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the greatest social commentator on the planet. This has been the James Skrmetta Show.